You are listening to a unique and special production of the 110-250 Audio Studio.
What's this, a daybird? A young bird? Who's the bird? Where is he?
All I really wanted to say was that I'm okay. And now I'm lost alone here with the sky.
Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino series in conjunction with the 110-250 Audio Studio with Band Mate Phil Schlotterer of the Kansas City power pop band, the Daybirds. As a part of a larger mission to capture the essence, history, and bravado of the late 90s, early 2000s band, we catch up with Phil from his home in Liberty to recount the tales, stories, and journey of band life. Prior to the Daybirds and in detail is a part of this towering act full of music magic. Brilliant assessments and stories ensue. Dig it the most.
Hey, Philly, what's up, man?
Hey, Joey.
How you doing?
Hey, I'm ready. Are you ready?
Welcome to Earth, pal.
Hey, I've got my little cup of water.
I love it.
I'm really super nervous, so this should be great.
Yeah, I think we got all the ingredients for a great interview, my man. I think we're good.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you lovely. Yes, everything's good.
Put you on the speaker.
Yeah, we're fine. Yeah, everything's good.
Okay.
Yeah, nothing to worry about. Nothing to get nervous about. We're just going to ease into it, and we're going to have a good time. We're going to relive some good times.
All right.
Okay, so Phil, as we begin here, we're going to get into your life and start at the beginning. As a kid, when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I really didn't think about it a whole lot, to be honest. I know I did like playing music. My mom started me out on piano lessons and stuff. I didn't want to do what I didn't want to do what the teacher was teaching me. I'd try. I'd just listen and figure it out by ear and then repeat it back to them. I played a lot on my own. I remember in third grade, I had written some music stuff, and we actually had a talent contest in grade school. And I remember that's probably one of the first times I ever got in front of people and played music. But I got up there and I had a little piano thing I wrote. I'm sure it was horrifyingly terrible. But I got up there as a little kid and just got in front of people and played it, and it was really fun. I was hooked. So it kind of started with that. I mean, I think the music thing really grew on me and kind of snuck up behind me. I mean, I never really was like, I want to be a fireman or I want to be a scientist or I want to be, I never really thought about it like that. But the further I went on, the further I was like, man, this is fun. I like doing this. And, it didn't work out as far as something that I did for a living, but it sure did work out for something that I was like, I enjoyed, and I sure, got to glean the most out of it, that I could in my life.
Tell me where you're from originally.
Kansas City is the metro area here. I'm from Liberty and grew up in Liberty. Still here, actually. My mom worked for TWA, so we traveled quite a bit. And so, I got to get out of the country a little bit and see some things. But most of the time, I've just been right here in Liberty, which I really don't mind. It's a nice little town.
You kind of talked a little bit about the music early on in your life, but tell me how you really got baptized into it. Like, how did it become a thing that not only that you wanted to do, but something that you liked, what you listened to, and how you, really started getting in to music?
Well, okay. Playing piano and stuff, that's one thing. But as I got, older, like 7 or 8, I'd start, my parents would give me allowance here and there. And I started getting into music. And I became kind of a fan, first of all. I remember one of the first albums I ever bought is I bought Bee Gees 8-track with my own money. My parents had 8-tracks, a bunch of different stuff, and they listened to not like just gospel, which, growing up in church and stuff, there was a lot of gospel. But there was also my parents like Stereo 100, KMBR, stuff like Carly Simon, Lightfoot, I can't remember his name, Gordon Lightfoot, B.J. Thomas, of course, James Taylor, that kind of stuff. And, my dad had a lot of country from when he was younger. I remember even 2 years old listening to my babysitter had played all kinds of old country. And that stuff that, I can remember singing along to certain songs, but that hooked me first was just listening. And I would sit in my parents' room and listen to stuff over and over and over for hours on end. switching up to 8 tracks and switching the 8 tracks within themselves. And that was something that hooked on me. And then when I was in 6th grade, that's when they started talking about band. And so I started getting involved with that. And I was like, what can I do? And I was like, what about percussion? And so I started doing percussion in band. And so I got the snare. And so I'm dragging that back and forth to school and all that. But that summer and stuff, I started, I had little jobs here and there and made money. I was like, I want a drum kit. And so I started saving up and I bought my own drum kit. I started teaching myself how to play. I would just put music on and try to play what they played, like turn up really loud so I could hear myself, and then try to copy, just copy what they're doing, And that's something that, I bought one kit and I would come home, 3rd, 4th grade, 5th grade, and practice for, hour and a half after school every day. I got to where I wanted to buy a second kit because metal was big, heavy metal was coming out pretty big right then. And everybody had a double bass, 2 bass drums. And so I was like, dude, I got to have 2 bass drums. So I saved up and I bought another drum kit. And so what I did is I took 2 5-piece kits and put them together. And so, most of the time your toms on a drum set or whatever, they'll be different sizes, 12, 13, 14, 15, all the way down. Well, I had 2 12s, 2 14s, 2 16s, and I just, I'd tune them to different things so they would sound like different sizes, but I actually had, doubles of everything just laid out as like a double piece, like a double kick, drum kit. And so, and I'd put my headphones on and put in some whatever and try to play along, and that kind of got me going. That's 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And then, we started coming up with all these bands, and most of it was just talk. It was just BS, Joe. We were just making it up in our heads, drawing little pictures about how we were in a band, Crystal Rose and Armor and all these, kind of goofy kid stuff. But then we started working towards it. And we had, I remember having to air 7 or 8 songs with this little band and 5 and 6. And we did all originals. We'd do maybe 1 or 2 covers, but they would stink, And, the songs themselves were pretty basic and semi-terrible. But, we got to start somewhere. And so that's what we did. We came up, that's something that it really lays into an identity for yourself, too. It's like, man, I'm a drummer. I'm in a band. I'm writing songs. It just gives you something to, land on and grow up on. You know what I mean? That's kind of where I was with all that. Eventually pushed into, where I really was in little bands. And we really were out trying to do stuff. I remember kicking one guy out of a band because he couldn't sing, and then they kicked me out, and then I started with this other thing, and we played some covers at school, and, on Liberty Friday night, and that got us all going again, and, just all the little funny little dramas and stuff. Some of that's from bands, people that I've known for years, and they've been other bands and toured around, and we ended up playing shows together and opening for each other and stuff like that. But that was all, between 83, 84, and 88, 89, 90, right around in there. And I was in the, punk, thrash, metal. A lot of it was metal because that's what was going on then. And that's what we liked. We wanted to rock. I remember 6th grade, I got Pyromania by Def Leppard and Metal Health by Quiet Riot. And those 2 albums were, they were way out of what I was supposed to be listening to because I was a little church kid. And that was about the opposite on the side of God as you could get. But I listened to them. And then, plus my parents found Christian rock music stuff that I really liked, like Petra, Michael W. Smith, Rez Band, just all kinds of early stuff that I thought was cool. Sweet Comfort Band, even like Amy Grant. I mean, some of, just all kinds of different, Christian music. They found stuff that was more rocking for me so I could listen. But I really had both sides. I mean, it's kind of like I had this little angel side where I had music, and I also had all the stuff that I listened to on, weren't exactly where I should be, but I found, you know what I'm saying? It all blended together, and it was something that from the fandom you create, and that's where we, and it's, the more you wrote, the better you get. And that's what we did. We just loved music. We sit around and listen to music for hours on end, and then we started trying to play it. And that's kind of just how it started going, you know.
Well, one of the big things in the early formation of getting into music, especially as a musician, is what you see live. What was your first live show that just totally blew you away?
Oh, my gosh. I have to think about that. I know it was Christian because that's what I'd go see is Christian concerts. Stryper was a gigantic one. They also there's a band called Bloodgood. That was really good. Altar Boys. There's a band called Altar Boys, which is like just real raw California punk, which was cool. That's Mike Stand. The guy's name is Mike Stand. It's like if you were ever supposed to be a rock star, your name would be Mike Stand. Super talented guy, just really hooky stuff. A band called Undercover, which was another like punk, straight on like loud punk rock, but it was, Christian lyrics and stuff, I'm trying to think of other shows throughout my life. Like, I know King's X was a giant show for me. That was killer. It's like I have a million flashes of all these little bits in my head of all the different shows. I'm trying to land on one. Of course, Suicidal Tendencies and Queensryche. Yeah. That show at the Municipal, I think, or whatever. That was just nothing much like that. It was just amazing. This is skipping around. That's later. I'm trying to think early stuff. Brian Duncan, who was like a singer who came to our church, and he was there are a few people that could sing like that guy. He's just amazing voice.
And that paints the picture. I mean, just what you said right there, just kind of, and that's a perfect precursor to what I'm going to get into next is, prior to the Daybirds, you would have had to have been the most veteran journeyed guy in that band. You tasted a level of fame that these guys didn't because you were in Dig Jesus. Talk about your life before getting into the Daybirds, what you were doing and kind of that ascension to being really big in Dig Jesus.
Well, with Dig Jesus, it was a deal where I was in a punk crash type band called DON, Degradation of a Nation. Very much into that like DRI and Suicidal Tendencies, and just like groovy punk rock, very loud, distorted, more yelling. I was not the singer, I was a drummer, and that was with Dave Anderson. And he's the one that ended up being the guitar player for Dig Jesus, and kind of like we all sort of transitioned with him into that. So that's 1988, 1989, 1990 is right in this point. And I was playing that stuff and running drums around. And that's the first time I actually got a chance to record in a little studio. Like we went to a studio and it's just in this guy's house. And we made Degradation of a Nation, that album. We put that down. And Dave wrote a lot of that stuff. And Eric Brown was the singer. And I was just back there, playing drums. And that summer, it was my freshman year of college over 1990. And then that summer of 1990, I bought Operation Mindcrime by Queensryche. And I was just so blown away by that album that it stayed in my tape deck all summer. And so I drove around trying, and I say that very, very seriously, trying to sing like him. And he really pulled my voice out, to where I could do some things. And that's where I really started with this whole thing with Dig Jesus. Before Dig Jesus, there was a couple little bands that started up. There was me and Bill Brown. Then this other guy was singing. I was still playing drums. And then we finally ended up with the lineup for Dig Jesus. And we had about 6 or 7 practices. And in that amount of time, we wrote 6 songs. And then we went to Brian Fitz's and recorded. And this guy in town, super cool guy. He basically was just like Tom Petty. He looked like him. He talked like him. He was just like Tom Petty. But anyway, we made that record. We recorded there with those 6 songs. It was bam, bam, bam. 6 practices, 6 songs into the recording studio. And with that tape, we sent it out to some friends that were out in California, and our friend Tony Shore heard it and just really dug it a lot. and he got us hooked up to where we were set up with this little record label called Brainstorm, which is Brainstorm Artists International. And that was, remember I said Undercover was a punk band? Well, Joe Taylor was the guy producing. And then there was a band called Daniel Amos, and that's Terry Scott Taylor. And if you look it up, he's one of the most important alternative Christian songwriter guys out there. And his band was DA, Daniel Amos, DA. And so Joe and Terry produced Dig Jesus' first record, Struggle Fish, out in California. And we did not have any kind of marketing budget. I mean, they paid for the whole recording. I remember the whole thing costing like $22,000, which is absolutely nothing nowadays. We sold, I don't know, about 12,000 or 13,000 albums. I don't know how much that is now, but that's back right when we first released it. Went on to do Magenta Manta Love Tree, the second album, which did better. We did about 17,000 copies of that. That was 2 summers later. And then we went on to do a live album that we really didn't even really realize we were going to do it until about 2 weeks ahead of time. And I think it's a really good little record. It's not anything, the first 2 records is what I really would stand on. And the live album is just sort of extra credit. We did not have a chance to set up as far as equipment. And there's a lot of things that we wish we could have mixed around with on it that we didn't get to do. But it is what it is. That's what you do when you're making music. Sometimes it doesn't work out exactly the way you want it to. It's not perfect, but it's real and it's there. And so that was Ascension 7, Rocket Ship to Heaven. That was the live album that Dig Jesus did. And then like 96 is when we broke up. But so, we've been out touring. Like we were planning stuff our own selves. We played at least once a month and sometimes 2 or 3 times in the weekend when we would be out. We'd play all over the Midwest. We played on the East Coast. We had friends fly us out to we actually played at a birthday party at this kid's house up in Washington State, like across the Sound. And it was just us and his family and his friends. And he flew us out there to play because he liked our band, The Christian, alternative scene, the fans are very, very loyal. And so it's like, you make friends for life with these people, And so it's like, with that going on, I used to meet with John and Dean, and we used to hang out and drink coffee and stuff, and I'd talk about Dig Jesus. And we joke around about it, say, hey, let's start a band, And it was like, there's something that we just we talked about. This is 4 or 5 years before the Daybirds. We were all friends. We all hung out. And then at one point, Dean and John got a hold of their prospective instruments and their Beatles books that they got a hold of and started learning. And right about then is 96. And that's when Dig Jesus broke up. I was like, well, why not we just start a band? And so John and Dean were in for it, and we were looking for a drummer, and we met Yeager. And that's kind of just how it started rolling. But it was just so funny because we used to joke around about Fab Force 5 or whatever. And we had this, made up all these crazy characters for these bands that were sitting around drinking coffee at 4 a.m. But then we ended up doing it, And John and Dean, it's like they did not have a whole lot of experience as far as playing instruments, but they had the right ear. It's like you can do anything if you sit down and just work through it. It's like they may not be able to do Paganini arpeggios, but they sure as hell could nail all the parts that we needed for the songs we were writing. And that's what we were doing. We were flying by the seat of our ass and just writing whatever and coming up and making sure, well, if this is how it's going to be and what it's going to be, we're going to play it exactly right. And we just worked it until it sounded right and then locked it in stone and moved on to the next song. So, that's kind of how that whole thing kind of shot off is, it's just so funny that John and Dean and I, we joke about that stuff, and then we're just like, let's do it anyway. Let's just do it. And it just, it took off. They were playing with Shy Ava, which, was, they got their instruments, and they started off playing with the bands within probably 4 or 5 months of when they bought their instruments. Dean got his from Aletha, which was a little ukulele that his girlfriend's now wife bought him. And then Sweetwood bought a keyboard, and they bought their Beatles books and just started goofing around playing songs. That's what, I've always heard them talking about. And then them playing with Shy Ava, that stuff was really cool too. They had some really good songs, and they really added a creative and a cool thing that band needed, I think. There wasn't, I don't know how many songs they got a chance to record and how many songs they recorded. I know Jimmy Gabriel was playing guitar and singing, and talk about a force as far as musically. He was really great too. But they were there, and I was coming out of the Daybirds, and we're like, let's put this together and just see what it is. And so the Sky Kings started, which, of course, we were the Sky Kings first before we figured out we had to change our name because of copyright law and some country studio band out in Nashville that already had records of the Sky Kings all over it, so we had to change it. But anyway, that's some of that. I don't know.
What you did was you completely, absolutely filled the blanks that I was looking for to get to this point. You went boom, boom, boom. So instead of me asking, you went right in. So my question is, there in the beginning when you guys got together, when, obviously you said you guys were flying off the seat, there was talent, you were the veteran guy in the band, but when did you realize, after Yeager got in and you had the nucleus, when did you realize you had the magic?
I knew we had the magic the 5 years before we even started, because of who they were and what they understood and the things that we would talk about. Music comes out of everything else. It all overlaps. You can be a writer and a painter and a sculptor and a dancer and a singer and a musician. It all overlaps. And the fact that I knew these guys and I knew where they were coming from and what they thought about the world and all that stuff, it's like I knew they had it before we even started. It was almost just like, I didn't have any questions. I just wanted to see what the monster would become, because I knew that they already, it's an ear, Joe. It's like, when can you tell that you can stop now because it's exactly right? And they had it, both of them. Yeager too. It's like, and also to recognize the golden nuggets. When you're playing along and there's something missing and somebody just goes, and does this thing, and the whole thing turns. And you're just like, this is it. This is the piece that is missing from this song, and it makes the song. Before, you didn't realize it was a skeleton until the flowers came. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
None of us are trained. I mean, I have had a little bit of class, a little bit of schooling, but not really enough to even make much of a damn difference on me. It's just having that thing to where you're fishing. You're just trying things out. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know music theory backwards and forwards. You have kind of stupid general ideas, but really that comes from your ear as well. Even you, Joe, you have a billion songs that you know. And so, I think it's part of why you like jazz so much. It's because you're a smart dude, and it's like it takes all those rules that are in your head for all the songs that you know, and it splits them in all these directions, and they're all very interesting outcomes. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
it's like,
totally.
It is, and it's like, in a way, that genre is so much more rich than even just rock and roll and pop. But it's like, that's where we were going with it. We were fans and we were doing what we loved. And it's like, it was also an easy way too. It was, we were not going to kill ourselves. We were, part of this whole thing is it is fun. We are having fun. It's not going to be work. I'm not going to sit here and stew over some extended 12th chord that I can't figure out and I can't play it again. It was about fun for us. And so that's where, that was part of it too. And there's a confidence when you're dealing with guys that know what they're doing, like a think tank or a good baseball team or basketball team. Everybody knows their parts and they're good at them and you can count on each other. It adds to this almost arrogance. I don't want to say we were arrogant. Maybe we were, but we just knew what the hell we could do.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I think the thing is, and I talked to Dennis at one point about this too, is that there was this indelible friendship, and I think there's a legacy that goes into what you guys were, and I think a part of that was this very deep friendship, because you guys would hang out no matter what, and it just so happened that you were creating music. You guys were all good friends. You're hanging out, doing your thing, but music just happened to be a part of that social tapestry that you guys created together.
Yeah, and I'll throw this in here too. I remember, years into it, me and Dean, riding back from somewhere in the dark, he's driving or whatever. And literally him saying to me, or I said to him, I don't even remember who said it to who. It's like, look, years from now, when this thing, something happens and we break up, I'm talking to you, you're talking to me, we're going to be apart. And we're going to say shit to each other for a long time, just, because we're together all the time. And so it's funny, and neither one was mad at the one. It's just the idea of it's time for space at that point. We weren't even planning it. But it's so funny because it's exactly what happened. It's like when we broke up, we just got separated. And I could call him and he could call me, but we didn't for a long time because it was just like, it's like we dismantled. We had to dismantle from each other and become ourselves again. We had all been so tied into each other. It's just funny. I think that's super. You know what I mean? But,
dude, that's such a poetically profound way of putting things, because I remember, and it's so weird, this summer I went out with the family on a trip. We went from Colorado to San Diego, and we swung through Vegas and stayed with Sweetwood at the Sweetwood, he calls. And I remember years ago when we sat around over coffee, I remember Sweetwood said at one point, all of us need to meet at a coffee shop in La Jolla as old men and just talk it out and just meet and have our gray, our balding, our stories, our lives. We become the Ben Folds lyric. And I remember when I was getting ready to leave his house in Vegas, I told him that right before I left. I said, dude, this is about as close as I can get right now at 50. But it's that saying, you're totally right. It's like there was that part of you guys that knew, probably before you knew, that there were certain things that were going to transpire. But I think that's why I want to do this. That's why I want to talk to you guys. You guys had something that was beautiful because it was music, because it was friendship, and you crystallized the time in life that was probably the most therapeutic thing you could have ever done with your time at that point in your life.
Well, and let me throw this out too. Some people, they look at this idea of being a musician and the goal is to be rich and to be famous and all that. It's like, I think the way we did it was perfect. It was exactly right. We got to experience the whole excitement of playing for people and having them enjoy it and being able to run around afterwards and do all the stupid crap we did afterwards, staying up till 4 a.m, drinking coffee or beer or whatever, meeting people in Chicago and meeting people in just every city we went to. And the thing is we never had to deal with the bullshit, Joe. We never had to deal with paparazzi crap. And most people might say, oh, you're just copping out. You're just saying that because it never happened to you. You go ask any of those famous people that have those assholes follow them around with cameras and see if they like it. Nobody likes it. You know what I mean? You can pretend like you like it. Maybe there's some, really arrogant people out there who think that they deserve that and that should just happen to them. They might like it. But no, people want to just be able to be normal too. And we really got both. It's like we got praised and then we could go anywhere we wanted and nobody knew who we were. And that was awesome too.
Man, you're saying things that are so spot on because like we said before this all started, I had mentioned that people had said, you might be a fifth Daybird. And the reason why was because I was close. I was hanging out. I was going on the road with you guys. I went to Milwaukee. I remember going to Omaha and we got snowed in and there was like celebrity comedians and people that were there. And I remember at one point you guys are off doing your thing and you're totally right. I watched it. And that's why I want to tell this story. You guys totally did get mobbed by everybody around you and people kept saying, are you in the band? And I think a couple of you guys were like, just tell them you're in the band. And I'm like, no.
I'm like, just tell them, dude.
Just tell them I'm in the band. I'm good. Let's go. And I was like, I don't want to mess with my karma, but I do remember that you guys 100% were in that world. And people, because I went to a lot of shows, people hung on everything you guys did. And the reason why they loved what you did, it's that whole quote of, Charlie Parker, what came out of his horn was his voice. What came from the stage was your voice. And your voice was unique because you guys switched instruments up. You guys were the most egalitarian group of guys going. no one was going to claim superiority because you guys were genuinely the World Series team. You were genuinely a team. That was the beauty of it.
Well, like you remember North by Northwest up in, I think it's in Portland. When we went there, we ended up playing at this place. It was like a hamburger soda malt shop, and it was had glass on 3 sides, like literally floor to ceiling glass on 3 sides of the restaurant. And it was kind of like the 5 Points in New York, where these buildings would come down and be skinny on one end.
Yeah,
that's where they had the stage at. And we got set up there, and I think there was a giant buzz about us. Everybody was talking about us and stuff. When we finally got set up to play the show, it was standing room only, this little tiny burger joint. Everybody sat Indian style on the floor. Like they were all sitting there looking up at us. And I remember having a feeling at that point where I was like, my God, this is it. These people get what we're doing. They're ready and eager to sit here and listen. And it was like, that's where, the monkey met the cupcake. It was like, all right, this is like it's answering itself. It's what we were doing and wanted to do was being reached by people who wanted to hear what we were doing. And it's just like, hey, they're taking it seriously. And we were serious too. I mean, we jumped around and we had a great time, but there was a side of us that we were like a sports team. We were going to effing win. We were going to win. Like we went into a place with 5 bands, we were going to be the best band, period. And, that was just that. It's weird how it can be both. It really was. We had so much fun and we're so relaxed together. But we also knew that when we cranked through certain parts of our music, that we could just destroy the house. And that's what we would want to do. Bashing on the keys, smashing those guitars, and just making it all just come apart, That moment up there in Portland with everybody sitting there calmly, silently, almost like they were in church or something. It is almost like a weird twinge, like pushed on a touch of worship that I really didn't like. But I knew it was just, this is just the music, not me or them or us. You know what I mean? It's like, this is us doing this thing.
And the thing that's great about this is that all these stories that I'm hearing, I remember they were just conversations. It was like, so what's up? How did it go? These were parts of the conversation, but the one story that I heard that painted the most Norman Rockwell picture for me was when you guys were in Oklahoma, and a lot of us came down, like friends that didn't, like Emmett came down, maybe Booze came down. There was a lot of people that came down. There was a battle of the bands, and Sixpence None the Richer, Leigh Nash was there, and you guys played, and she got tears in her eyes, and I always hear that song, Kiss Me, and I always talk about you guys. The minute that song comes on, I'm like, this woman loved these guys, and it's what you're talking about in Portland.
Her husband was in a thing called Pray for Rain, and they're one of my favorite bands too. Amazing. They're amazing. And he was behind her, hugging her, and she was crying. She started crying and watching us, and her husband is hugging her. It's like watching a Hallmark movie or something. And then finally, afterwards, she came up and she's like, you guys are the future of what's happening. She goes, you guys are bringing in what's coming soon. And she was so sweet and super nice, just wonderful. She was a super wonderful person.
And the good thing what you're doing, Phil, and this just shows how good and how much of a veteran you are and your memory of the band. You're going through things that I would have already asked. But the one thing that I want to know from you is that you clearly came in as a veteran. And I got to say that when I interviewed Yeager was very, very highly complimentary of your mentorship of him. The way that you were and who you were was exalted when he came in, and he really admired you. And I keep saying that with you because there's a role that everybody played. As much as you guys, tossed the instruments around, you were the veteran of the band. But as the veteran of the band, you guys all grew together. How did that happen? How did you see the band evolve from those early conversations with Dean and John to what you guys ultimately became as a band when you were in Portland capturing an audience?
I think one of the things that, and I don't know how conscious I was of doing it, I think one of the things that I do well is I can pull the best out of others. And that's something that I just not necessarily was like, now I'm going to have this goal of pulling the best out of others. That's something that I would push them, and I would, make sure that when they did hit something amazing, that they understood that it was really that amazing, and challenge them to be like, dig, find, throw it out if it sucks and find something better. And then just kind of guiding the whole thing. And I mean, I did a lot of stitching, you know what I mean? Like arranging, everybody had ideas, and I think I helped with a lot of like some of the glue that kind of put things together. We were very eclectic too. I mean, you think about all the different changes and stuff that we would go through, especially that first album with the Sky Kings record. There's a lot of like just directional changes that happen in the middle of stuff. And I think that was like kind of a goal too. We like to surprise. But as far as like me, what I was doing was help them pull out what was already in there. You know what I mean? And making sure that they understood when it happened what it really was. That they, you do have it. Yeah, you wrote something that it's as good as Paul McCartney. You did. Or, something as good as Jeff Lynne, or as good as David Bowie. Or, it's like you put something on there, and it's like, it sounds like you too. And it really did. And to have that understanding of what level you're really at, and to be able to say, okay, this really is done, or no, this really is not up to par, and we need to either chuck it or work it.
Yeah, 100%. So, as you kind of walked up that ladder with where the Daybirds were going, Dennis Rodriguez was a part of that path that led you to a different level. Talk to me a little bit about that era of Dennis.
That was a very interesting time. I don't know. I think there was a lot of maybe me fooling myself a little bit of what I thought might happen, and just had a lot of, not false hope at all, but just like maybe ended up more like, not delusions of grandeur either, because we were that good, but just was hoping things would line up in a much easier and cleaner and quicker way than it ever did, and just thinking and automatically assuming that it was. Now, that drove the music, and I think it made for a lot of great things that we worked on. I mean, as far as like, him putting us in showcases and renting vans for us, and to be able to record in Las Vegas and in Montreal and in Los Angeles, and then where else? Nashville. That's stuff that I'll never forget. I mean, him doing that stuff, that is something that's marked in my mind. It's like, with the Daybirds and all that, there was few times where I felt like I really was making it happen then. Being in Montreal, riding the train downtown to the studio, recording all day, and then going back and taking a nap at the hotel after, and then walking up San Sulpice and watching all the Parisians watch Bon Jovi and drink and shoot pool and do karaoke. It just, it was really, I don't, when else would that happen in your life? It really worked out like that. He never put us as a priority. It was always this giant 24-karat gold carrot hanging right in front of our noses. And he just never turned around and paid enough attention to us. It was a pet project that he never sat in his lap. Like really just sat in his lap and made it flesh out.
That's interesting.
So I don't know. I mean, I really was excited, and he was excited for us, and he was all for us. But he's like, he never really, I don't think, lined it up the way he should have to make it line up for us.
So instead of getting to that like JFK moment of where you were at when the phone call happened, it almost sounds like what you're saying is it was an inevitability. If he would have gone a different percentage to what you guys were doing and taken it in a different like seriousness, you wouldn't have even had to have gotten to that phone call. It would have materialized one way or another.
Yeah, I think so. And I kind of was, look, I've been swinging at the fences since 1990, and now it's 2004. You know what I'm saying? And so maybe I wasn't at the place where I still was ready to just keep beating down the dressers, because it's like I knew that what was coming was going to be 10 times more of what we were already doing. And to one point, that's really good. But then it's like, there's stuff that I regret. You know, everybody's got regrets. You know, stupid crap that I did and said that I didn't mean, and laying blame for, you know, on other things other than myself, which I should have blamed myself. You know, there were certain things of why it all kind of split apart. And I was glad that the Daybirds kept going. And I was hoping that they was going to do great. You know, they went on for another year or whatever. And I was hoping that they would just be like, catch on fire. And, you know, I know they did what they did and everything went pretty good. And so I don't know what happened. I wasn't involved at the end of that part of it. But I think in a way, I kind of beat myself up a little bit. And I have a sorry for them, because I feel like I kind of let them down, because I kind of just sort of pulled back a little bit. You know what I mean?
Well, you know, the one thing I will tell you, too, that was interesting, it's like all of you guys up to this point, the only person I haven't spoken with is Dean, is that all of you are saying very revelatory things that are very key to this. And one thing that John Evans said that was so key to this is these suits were never going to get you guys. These guys that were in high-rises, that were writing the checks, and it's kind of that sad song of the music industry, the difference between the creatives and the squares. At the end of the day, what you guys were doing and who you guys were, there was no way that anybody was going to be able to get it. And I think that's why I want to make sure that anybody that wonders about the Daybirds will never have to wonder again, because you guys are going to tell this story. And what you guys did was exactly what you said earlier on. You guys were pre the paparazzi, but you lived this dream, and you guys have these memories in this vessel that you lived it. You don't have to say, did I live it? You lived it.
I wish I wish every moment would have been on tape somewhere, and we could create a reality show of what happened, because it's as good as anything that anybody ever made up. You know, it really went down a path. It was like an old story. And then also, Joe, as an aside, I'd like to say Evans is a bad mofo. Famous FM, they're all bad mofos. He just was right on top of it and knew what was going on. I'm so grateful he let us record there and everything. I love that dude. He's freaking awesome. I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, and I think that's the key to all of this, is that the sense that I've gotten out of all of this, and the sense that I always got from you guys, is that at the end of the day, we have directions that we have to move in. But you guys all did it for the right reasons. You guys were all tight. You guys were all friends. You guys were all doing this that's the thing. You guys were all doing this for the right reasons. There was no one in this at any point that was doing it for any other reason other than for what you were doing. It was for friendship, and it was for the love of music.
To make the best songs we could make. To make the best songs.
Period.
And to get out and to do them live and have fun, just living the sweat out of your body, being the music, you know?
Absolutely, without a doubt. So let me ask you this. And, you know, you guys with Dennis got the chance to go to Vegas. You guys went to LA. You guys went to Montreal. These were very momentous things. What did those trips mean? And I heard about them by osmosis, but those had to be huge growth periods for you guys, not only as a band, but just as humans.
Well, I think that's tough, because part of it, I mean, I don't know how much growth it was musically, other than us just working, but just as our friendship and spending time together and doing all this stuff together, that was part of it too. I mean, it's kind of like, you know, I was like going through some, it's like, I can't believe somebody's paying for this. You know what I'm saying? Because it's so much fun. It's exactly what we want to do. And when, you know, I remember times of being Sweetwood or being Yeager or being Dean, or look at each other and just be like, what the hell, man? Is this happening? You know what I mean? Like, we were just like blown away by it, you know? Super cool, you know? And yeah, just those times, you know, there was a lot of, you know, we had to leave stuff behind here, make sure we were organized through the whole thing, make sure we kept our chops and, equipment running, and, there's a lot of other little things going on, all that stuff at the same time. People that he wanted us to meet, this, that, and the other, and all, it was like, I'm just so grateful I could be a part of it, It was super fun, and I didn't know what was going to become of it. I was hoping more than what did and sooner, but just even doing what we did, I just was like blown away by it. And,
The one thing that's very key about what we're doing right now is that we're talking about something that happened decades ago. And, whenever we think about our younger years, and sometimes I'll think about our 20s, like when we were all sitting around in those coffee shops and we were talking about our lives and doing our things, we all had our problems, but I don't remember them. Like, I don't really think, well, that was one thing that was really big that was going on. I mean, we all had girl things. We all had family things. We all had the things that go into just growing pains. But we don't really think about that. So I guess my thing now is that when you sit back in the easy chair and you think about your life and the legacy of the Daybirds, what comes to mind? What's like the guttural, like visceral thing that comes in that says, bam, that was it. That was the band. That was our life.
I say it was like knowing a good dream ahead of time and then actually living it out. You know what I mean? Like,
oh, yeah, dude. That's so well said.
With a 6-shooter on your side and you're just shooting from the hip, putting that together and deciding to work and then starting our rehearsals and coming together and working on it, figuring out this music as we went. It's like we knew what we had. We knew as we built it and as we made these songs what we had. And then it became a deal with, we've got to get this out so we can put it on a record, put it in a hall, and play it live. I just think about the four of us and just being willing to do it and then having the skills to do it, having the mindset and the diplomacy and the work ethic and all that to just keep it all in line and do what we did and get as much as we did get, done. I mean, I still think that if the right person got a hold of Turnstile or You Rock, I think that they'd find something in it that is as good as anything out there. And I know that. And that's something I look at that and I'm like, me and John and John and Dean, we made that happen. And it makes me laugh, laugh not, it's funny, but laugh like with, oh man, we did it. We did do it.
Yeah.
For real.
For sure. Yeah, you did. You 100% did. And, I guess my final question, or one of my I got a couple more questions. And one of them is the one thing that well, the one thing that I did think about that was a part of this, and I've kind of posed it to everybody, from Dennis on down to the band members, is that to me it seems as though you guys were on this cusp of promoting yourself. You were making all of this music physically as well as in the studio. You were promoting it, doing all this, but you guys were right before that wave, before we got into this digital revolution that we're in right now with all the social media and all the ways that you can promote. Do you ever think that things could have probably transpired in a different way if there would have been a different era you would have been in? I mean, and I think I'm always reminded that there's a lot of things that go into things working the right way. But I think that because you guys were before things, you could really take the destiny in your own hands. Do you ever think about that?
It's a tough call, Joe, because it also points to a time to where all are revealed. And we're not the only band that was out there doing it. And so it's like, get that revolution. Yeah, your stuff is out there, but so is 25, 50 other bands that were working as hard as you're working that's out there. Yeah. And so I think it's sort of, the media and the technology could have taken it to a certain point. I think it's very possible. But I also think, too, it might just be just as much of a luck of the draw as it was for us, just because of the fact that it really is who hears it. And it's like things today with the digital technology, things are so much more of a flash in the pan than they used to be. Something to be amazing, and then it's gone. And it just, nobody will give it a second thought because there's such a glut of technology, there's a glut of music. Everybody's a songwriter. Everybody's putting stuff out. Everybody's a photographer, and it's just like, how can you get through all the material? You just want to take a nap. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like there's no way to get through all the new bands. I was on YouTube, and I put on alternative 90s bands, unheard alternative, and there was like 500 videos, and every song that came on was a band I never heard of. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Over and over and over and over.
Yeah.
It's almost like a good football team or a good baseball team. It's like you know how to work the rules, and you just put it together right, and then, you even have battles where you fight against each other, but it's music instead of yards or points,
Yep. That's true. Totally true. So when you think about, the one thing that's always been the backbone of what we consider the Daybirds legacy, and this whole idea was started by the great Michael Norman Booz, who just simply texted me, Daybirds. And I thought, you know what? I'd thought about it for a while. And then I finally was like, you know what? It's time. And I think about all of you guys and how tight you guys were and still are. And is there anything that you see that's left unsaid? Anything that could be said, or do we have a book that's where it should be? It's at the right page.
I think there's some things that I said that I wish I didn't. I wish I could take back. And if anybody else wants to name them, I'm just going to leave it unsaid because I don't want to remind them. Not that I was a terrible person or nothing. I just think I was a stupid kid, and I wasn't thinking through everything, and I should have held my tongue and respected more and people a little more. I will say also, I think the Daybirds is as good as any band I was ever in. It's as good as De Jesus. I think in a way it was better for me because I got to be more involved. I wasn't just singing. It was much more a part of me because I think I kind of helped herd it into its beginning. And then, it went from herding to guiding to teaching to even, instructing, consulting. Because as they got better, I just kind of backed up and they got better and better. We all helped each other. Just that. I just think that there's some things I wish I hadn't have said. If I made any of them mad, I'd say I'm sorry, and I wish I could go back to that time and erase what I said. Other than that, nothing specific comes to mind.
So let's say in a couple weeks from now, you get a random phone call during the middle of the day, and you get somebody that is a promoter, and they say, we're going to do a reunion show. We're going to get the Daybirds back on stage. What do you say to that?
I'd say up until about 2 or 3 months ago, I wouldn't even be in a position to make it happen. I think now I could, and I'd say yes. But
Beautiful.
It's something that, everybody's got to be on the same page. I think we've had plenty of time apart to deal with, whatever might have been built up, and I think it would be fun. I think we'd have a lot of fun.
I agree. Silly, let me tell you something right now as we kind of conclude this. I just want to let you know right now, I've been doing the interview scene for a long, long time with a lot of musicians. This was one of those Lou Donaldson, Sonny Rollins kind of interviews. You always remind me of kind of the Moses of this band, and it's something that Yeager even talked about. There's a very you're the wise one with the in Cloud City with the long beard and the big long stick walking up the mountain and everybody's falling. You encapsulated so much. You eclipsed a lot of questions that I was going to ask and got right to it in such a profound way. Dude, I hope you feel good about this, but I feel like you did just unbelievably. It was brilliant, dude. I appreciate you opening up.
Well, I'm glad to do it. It's something that if the other guys are as proud of it as I am, they sure as hell should be.
100%, and I feel that. I feel almost the giddiness, and I think what I've heard from a lot of the guys is that there's been a revisit of just a lot of things, a lot of memories, a lot of music.
I don't know if you could set it up, Joe, but I would a time where all four of us got together and you just put it on video and just let's crack just for about 2 hours and see what you get.
But yeah, dude, Phil, this was wonderful, man. See you, Philly.
Later on, Joe.
Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, brought to you by the 110-250 Audio Studio, where we give you a fresh and comprehensive insight into the finest musicians in the world. Thanks to Phil for imparting the wisdom and refreshments. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on both iTunes and Spotify. Swing by Neon Jazz at youtube.com, and for all things relatable or forgotten, you can go to joedimino.com. Until next time, enjoy the music out there.
Was it I'm okay?
What's this, a daybird? A young bird? Who's the bird? Where